Chris Canty's with us. Chris Canty spent all weekend here in New York playing golf, wanting to play golf, trying to play golf.
I didn't actually get a chance to
play
a golf.
Play a round of
but
golf.
I did get out to Top Golf, had a little fun out there down in New Jersey. It was good. It was good.
I like it. Enjoy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to have you in this morning on this rainy day. You got the golf in.
I know, right? We had some golf weather this weekend, Friday and Saturday, and then all of a sudden that changed.
Opposite of golf weather today.
Anytime, spring, we're waiting on you. Anytime.
We're skipping spring. I think we're going right to summer. You know, for weeks we've been anticipating the big Dallas Cowboys meeting between Jerry Jones and Dez Bryant. Will he or won't he take a pay cut to remain a Cowboy? Guess what? In the end, the answer was neither. The Cowboys' all-time leader in touchdown receptions is a Cowboy no longer. The 20-minute meeting didn't sit well with Dez, as you might imagine. Bryant said that the, quote, Jason Garrett guys were partially to blame for the Cowboys letting him go, but Dez doesn't blame the man in charge.
Jerry Jones, he loved me to death, and I love him too. I honestly believe in my heart, you know, this was a hard decision for him, but, you know, when it's 5 or 6 guys at a table against one guy, you got to do it. This situation was very unfair to me, and I'll put it that way. It was an unfair situation, you know, because if they did want to, you know, get rid of me, they could have told me that. You know, they could have told me that, and I would have respected that.
All right, Chris Canty, what does this mean now for the Dallas Cowboys moving forward? Were you surprised?
I was surprised. I thought it made more sense from a football perspective for the Dallas Cowboys to keep Dez Bryant, but I will say this. The way that things went down, it wasn't solely a football decision. It might have been spurred by the money and the economics of the business with that $16.5 million cap number, but I think there were some people in the building that were uncomfortable with Dez Bryant, and they felt like we would be able to move forward with Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott being the identity of the team, and those are the faces of the franchise from a leadership standpoint. So I think that's exactly what's happening here. I think there are a couple of different layers to the issue, but Dez Bryant is absolutely right in his criticism of the Dallas Cowboys, and when they got rid of him, the timing of it is all wrong. You should have gave him an opportunity to get a chance to get some of that money at the top of the free agent market, but by waiting about a month after free agency opens to release him, I just felt like that was a little unfair to Dez.
Well, and even if you don't care if it's unfair to Dez or not, it's not the right move for your football team. I'm not saying cutting him is not the right move, but there is no benefit to cutting him now as opposed to a month and a half ago. None. Yeah. And people say sometimes indecision is worse than the wrong decision. It seems to me the only logical reason that they would have waited this long to cut him, if they weren't negotiating about money, and it's not like they signed some major free agent. I know they signed Allen Hurns, but he's not the top of the market free agent. Is if there was an argument or disagreement within the organization, essentially, I would imagine, Jerry Jones wanting to keep him, other power, whether it be the coach, the quarterback, the top players on the team not wanting him, and eventually the latter group won out because had made this move 6 weeks ago. Could the Cowboys have been in the market, I don't know, for the Brandon Cooks trade? Like, they have a better pick to give up than Los Angeles. They are in the window right now where Dak Prescott is so cheap that you have the ability to add that type of player. Like, I don't understand the timing of it. And what I will say is this. The Cowboys have a quarterback making less than $1 million. That is your time to win this moment. Here pretty soon, they don't only have to give their quarterback a new contract, they got to give their running back a new contract. That's going to make it harder to upgrade a defense that needs upgrading. It's going to make it harder to hold on to those 3 all-pro offensive linemen. And so to take a step backwards when you are in your championship window is foolhardy to me.
So, Cece, I'll ask you this then. Are the Cowboys better off this morning than they were a week ago?
Well, when you don't want someone in the building, because that was the statement that they made. We don't want to take the chance of him getting hurt in the off-season workouts. We're willing to take that hit right now. Are they better off? This is what they wanted to do.
Are they a better team, though, with who they have now?
Dez just hadn't been productive. Like, we can sit here and talk about who he used to be, but he hadn't been productive. So does it make their quarterback better? Because when you make decisions like this, it's not only a wide receiver decision. Like you said, it's off the field. And I believe it was how Dez treated and interacted with the quarterback, I believe, affected them wanting to keep him. That's the reason why I believe ultimately why Jerry lost out in this deal. Because the quarterback has not gotten better. And how many years are they going to have their star wide receiver yelling or unhappy on the sideline? It's something that gets old. Now, when you're getting 1,200, 1,400 yards, they're willing to tolerate that. That's what they're doing with the Giants. But when you're like Dez, and you've had 3 subpar seasons, those aren't things that the team is looking to move forward with. I believe it affected Dak. I believe the coaches and the administration there, they communicated that with Jerry, that we're better off moving forward. So this is what they think. They think they're better. So I'm not going to question. They're there working with the team. So if Dallas thinks they're better, I think they're better.
Yeah, it has to be a situation where they feel like it's addition by subtraction. And, CC, you're absolutely right. You don't get the benefit of the doubt when you're not producing on the field. And Dez Bryant really hasn't been productive as a wide receiver.
And if it had been an injury or an athletic thing, Chris, don't you think Jerry or the general manager or someone else would have been in the room? Because to me, it set off a red flag when Jerry came to the meeting by himself.
Yeah.
You know, and if it was just about performance, we could talk about it.
That his cap guy's not there, that nobody's there to talk about incentives. That was Chris's point. When Jerry walks in by himself, you know you're getting cut, essentially.
Yeah, essentially, that's exactly what went down. That's what I was saying. That was my earlier point. The fact that there was no attempt to restructure or to try to work some situation out to lower the cap hit, that just clearly signals to me that the Dallas Cowboys, some of the players, some of the coaches did not want him in the building any longer. To me, it just seems like it's a little unfair to treat your all-time touchdown receptions leader the way that they've treated Dez by not releasing him at the beginning of free agency and giving him an opportunity to find a landing spot. Like, I understand the argument that teams want to make and saying that we needed time to go through the pre-draft process and the offseason cycle to be able to find viable options to potentially replace the production. But to me, it just seems unfair to Dez Bryant in this situation where he could have been one of the receivers at the top of the free agent market.
I also want to talk about whether or not it was ever realistic with the Cowboys as presently constituted that Dez was going to recapture anything close to what he had in years 3, 4, and 5. Because that was the prime of his career. That was when he was one of the 3 or 4 best receivers in the league. So those were also years 3, 4, and 5, the last 3 healthy years of Tony Romo. Year 6, Dez was hurt and Romo was hurt. Year 7, Dak took over. Year 8, Romo's gone and Dak is the quarterback. Those were the 3 years that Dez was not productive. The last 2, healthy. I want to then add to that what we learned from watching Tony Romo on television this year. Tony Romo is an outstanding communicator. Tony Romo is great about telling you what's going on, what he's seeing, what you're seeing. And then I'm going to talk about what Chris...
And he's also saying that the people who don't have the type of football IQ. So he's also speaking a language that people can understand, even though he speaks a different football language.
Well, that, you finished my thought. Because one thing that you've explained to me about Dez is that Dez, for all of his gifts, is not necessarily the most sophisticated football player. Dez is not a guy that can line up in multiple spots. Dez is not a guy that can run a whole variety of routes. So is it possible in your eyes that part of the lack of production from Dez wasn't necessarily just an athleticism dropping off, but he had a quarterback who was also playing translator to a degree?
Yes.
And then you had a rookie. You had, in year 6, you had backup quarterbacks in there. Year 7, you had a rookie quarterback in there who's not able to play translator the way Tony Romo did for us on television this year. Because Romo talks about football and shows it. I've watched football with you and I've listened to Romo.
Yep.
And for guys that have that level of football IQ, they can explain it to people that don't fully understand it. And so how much of that do you think is what was going on?
I think Tony Romo made Dez Bryant. I think Tony Romo made him the receiver. Now, people want to say, oh, Dez made all these athletic plays. Look at how good Dez and Tony were when the plays were off schedule, which we talked about earlier, Jenna. When Tony Romo was scrambling, Dez Bryant would be able to ad-lib with the best of them. I believe that Tony Romo, his ability to be able to explain the offense and what he wanted Dez to do, it helped. And when we got to Dak, he had to go backwards because Dak, the way he sees football and plays football, is totally different than Tony Romo. Now, us being blessed as football fans with Tony Romo, very seldom are you able to see a guy who's able to leave the football field and communicate, Chris, what's actually going on and why things are happening, and sometimes before they happen, in real time. The way football players see it, the way you watch film and everything. So, for me, I could see the disconnect So from Tony Romo, from the time he started falling off, that period, also you could see where Dez started to fall off.
Yeah, you know what? It's just one of those situations where you clearly don't have the production from that receiver position. The pay scale is a little bit off with production with Dez Bryant. They're moving on now. But for me, I don't know where the Dallas Cowboys go to try to replace that production, because what they have on their roster right now just isn't good enough to get Dak Prescott back on track.
Right, and not the heaviest draft class as far as wide receivers go.
Yeah.
No.
All right, Chris, stick around. Coming up, how concerned should the Patriots be that Gronk is still considering retirement every day? That's next on First Things First.
And WWE checks looking better and better every day.